Next on the news. A chance to encounter Catholicism like never before.
For many, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it comes with a price tag. I'm Jessica Easthope with how the Catholic Foundation is working with parishes in the Diocese of Brooklyn to send hundreds of young people overseas to World Youth Day.
Then the state of the state. How do you see New York? The governor's giving grades. Plus, a 6-year-old shooter pulls the trigger on his teacher. Now he's in custody and his mother could face charges. And the miracle on the Hudson, 14 years later, but it still feels like yesterday for this passenger.
I truly believe I was on that plane for a reason and purpose.
Why God wanted Dave Sanderson on flight 1549. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now. The sounds of faith on fire. 3 million young people sleeping out on Brazil's Copacabana beach just to be in the presence of Pope Francis. The massive pilgrimage is called World Youth Day. It's a time when kids from all over the world gather in one place every 3 years to celebrate their Catholic faith in a big way. But because of the pandemic, it's been years since the last life-changing experience. Now, World Youth Day is back, and hundreds of young people from the Diocese of Brooklyn are about to pack for Portugal. But as Current News' Jessica Easthope tells us, it's not without some sacrifice. Hi, Jess.
Hi, Christine. Yeah, World Youth Day, this can be the seed that can possibly one day grow into a vocation. But the reality is, to get on a plane, travel across the world, and pilgrimage to Portugal, it costs money. But each time the Pope calls the world's young people, the Catholic Foundation makes sure anyone looking to go will, no matter the price.
So this is the t-shirt for the parents.
Father Carlos Velasquez knows how important World Youth Day can be to a person's faith formation.
And these cream ones with the color logo for the pilgrims.
As pastor of St. Bridget's in Bushwick, he's hoping the 48 young people from his parish attending World Youth Day have a similar experience to what he had at World Youth Day in Sydney in 2008.
It allows them to be able to come back excited about the faith, not ashamed of their faith, excited to come back to learn more about their faith and to deepen their relationship with Jesus.
St. Bridget's has been fundraising for 2 years to help the group get enough money to make the trip to Portugal. But at more than $4,500 a person, they'll need more than what they've made from bingo nights and bake sales.
The reality is that as you have those kids that want to go, we have to help them in order to get them there.
And as a pilgrimage, there are sacrifices that are being asked of them. Part of those sacrifices are financial.
The Catholic Foundation of Brooklyn and Queens makes it happen.
We don't want anyone to not be able to make the trip because of financial circumstances. They do a great job. They do their own fundraising. They're doing a lot of pieces of this, and we do a little part and help to get some money to them to make sure that it could become a reality for them.
For years, the Diocese of Brooklyn has sent the largest group of young people from the United States. This year, the diocese is sending more than 350. The Catholic Foundation is prepared to distribute $150,000 to participating parishes, making sure faith comes before the figures.
Youth ministry really has been the top priority of the foundation. That focus has been, what are the things we could do that move the faith on to the next generation? How can we help the process of helping our young people to encounter Jesus?
To see that the church is larger than just Brooklyn, larger than just the United States, but to be able to go to Europe and to see so many people that are alive and vibrant in their faith, you can't put a price tag on that.
There are 21 parishes sending young people to Portugal this year. According to the Catholic Foundation, more than half will need some kind of financial assistance. Christine, those scholarships will be distributed in March.
Wow, Jess. So to have this many young people going and the coordination and the planning that goes into all of it, how does the diocese ensure that everybody gets that full experience?
Yeah, so one of the ways they're able to do that is that the first Friday of every month leading up to World Youth Day, there will be a holy hour at one of the participating parishes. It gives these kids a chance to meet. They have adoration in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and then they're able to just hang out and get to know each other. And that way they're comfortable and they're able to encounter Christ as a group when it comes time for them to travel.
It sounds so exciting. Thanks, Jessica Easthope. Thanks so much for reporting on that. Now, if you want to help the Diocese of Brooklyn's young people pilgrimage to Portugal this summer, there's still time. You just have to make a donation to the Catholic Foundation, and you can do that right now. Just head over to the CatholicFoundationBQ.org/donate. New York Governor Kathy Hochul plans to tackle some crucial goals in 2023. In her first State of the State address, the first female governor of New York outlined broad policy proposals. She wants to improve public safety and make it more affordable for people to live in New York. Here are some of the key takeaways you need to know from the governor's speech. Hochul proposed automatic minimum wage increases, linking the wage to the consumer price index. That means if the index goes up 3%, so would the minimum wage paycheck. The governor once again touched on New York's bail laws, responding to concerns about crime by proposing to give judges more latitude when setting bail. The governor also detailed how she plans to achieve a previous promise she made to add 800,000 new homes over the next decade. This includes creating a New York housing compact in which every town, city, and village in the state would receive a target number of new homes to create. And finally, Governor Hochul focused on mental health, unveiling a $1 billion plan meant to drastically change the state's approach to mental health. Another thing New York may see, a housing makeover. Billions in renovations could be coming to the Big Apple. This is being spearheaded by Mayor Eric Adams. He's trying to convert unused office spaces into 20,000 apartments. If the proposal goes into law, it'll have a major impact on downtown Brooklyn, Midtown Manhattan, and Long Island City, Queens. As people continue to work from home, Adams said, quote, "The need for housing is desperate, and the opportunity offered by underused office space is clear." That's all happening as New York is struggling with another type of housing crisis. Migrants that were bused into Port Authority from Colorado are being sent to homeless shelters now. That's because migrant relief centers are already at max capacity, according to city officials. More than 26,000 migrants are taking shelter in New York City as of Sunday. The mayor has said that resources are on the brink of collapse. There's another major problem hitting Washington. This time it's concerning the president. An investigation is trying to figure out how classified documents meant for Joe Biden when he was vice president were found in a D.C. office. Isabel Rosales has the story.
President Joe Biden under fire. Following revelations that 10 classified documents from his time as vice president were discovered, among other materials, by his personal attorneys at a private office in Washington, D.C., occupied by Biden from 2017 to 2019. The government materials found last fall were promptly turned over to the National Archives, which maintains the records of federal office holders when their service has ended. The White House counsel's office says the president was unaware the documents were there and doesn't know what they contained. But a source familiar with the matter says the materials covered topics including Ukraine, Iran, and the United Kingdom. The U.S. Attorney in Chicago is now reviewing the situation as the Justice Department determines how to proceed. The circumstances have some similarities to the scandal that enveloped former President Donald Trump, who is currently under investigation after scores of classified documents were uncovered at his Mar-a-Lago home during an FBI raid last August. But there are clear distinctions between the two cases, including the number of documents and types of classifications involved, the circumstances in which they were discovered, and the level of cooperation with federal authorities. Republicans, however, seizing on the controversy.
How long have they been sitting around? Who had access all of this time? How many people had access all of this time? Of course, people are asking, where's the FBI raid?
The chair of the House Oversight Committee says he plans to press the National Archives for more information on the matter. In Washington, Isabel Rosales, Currents News.
Former Vice President Mike Pence commented on the matter, saying the way the FBI is handling this investigation versus the search of former President Donald Trump's home proves a, quote, double standard. Now to another investigation, this one at the Vatican. After nearly 40 years, the Vatican's tribunal has reopened the case of the so-called Vatican girl who disappeared back in 1983. Emanuela Orlandi was only 15 when she went missing after a music lesson. Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni says the case was reopened in response to requests made by the Orlandi family. Information gathered during the official proceedings decades ago will be re-examined, including new and old leads. leads. The cold case mystery has sparked dozens of conspiracy theories over the years, and some even involve the Holy See. Elise Allen, the senior correspondent for Crux, believes this could be a chance for the church to set the record straight.
I think right now what the Vatican wants to do is get back to the nuts and bolts of it and to say, you know, this is exactly what we know. And maybe they're at a point where they're ready to share some of that. I think the announcement that they're going to reopen the case means they're ready to to be fairly transparent, would be my guess, would be my hope. They're going to be fairly transparent with what they know. But to get back to the heart of it and hopefully start this investigation over again with the way it maybe should have been handled to begin with. Because when you have a case that's this high profile, you have a lot of people that are going to try to use it to their own ends. You know, journalists who might find a witness out of thin air, you know, that has information that was never known before. And that's what's happened with this case again and again and again. That's ultimately led in so many different directions. So I'd say just be wary of that going forward.
Last year, Emanuela Orlandi was featured in a Netflix documentary titled The Vatican Girl. This may have increased pressure on the Vatican to reopen the case. There's a lot more news headed your way.
The 6-year-old child displayed a firearm, pointed it at her, and fired one round.
Terror in the classroom, how a 6-year-old got a hold of a gun and shot his teacher. Evacuations ordered, historic flooding rages on as Mother Nature continues to pummel the Golden State. Then this.
If you do the right thing, God will take care of you.
And how one survivor from the Miracle on the Hudson thinks he was put on that plane for a reason and a purpose.
As the fog lifted and the world watched.
The casket being brought out from the Basilica into St. Peter's Square.
They're really being very true to his request to celebrate something simple.
Currents News was live in New York.
I believe Cardinal Ratzinger did the Mass when John Paul II died.
And the Vatican.
He had his rosary in his hands, his crucifix. It was just a beautiful, beautiful, moving moment.
Bringing you closer to the final farewell of Pope Benedict XVI in St. Peter's Square.
Holy Father arriving now. He's in his white cassock with a stole.
Nostri omnipotens Deus, et dimissis peccatis nostris, perduca nos ad vitam aeternam.
Amen. Putting your faith in the news. Currents News.
Bless Abby. Give her family the strength that they need to get through this.
Prayers for Abby Zwerner. The Virginia elementary school teacher is recovering in the hospital after being shot by her first grade student, leaving the community of Newport News with more questions than answers. That school is closed for the rest of the week, giving the 25-year-old teacher and the students in her class time to heal. The 6-year-old shooter is in custody, and police say this shooting was not an accident. A search for answers after an unthinkable crime Friday in Newport News, Virginia. Police say a first grader shot a teacher, Abby Zwerner, on purpose.
Mrs. Zwerner was providing class instruction. The 6-year-old child displayed a firearm, pointed it at her, and fired one round. There was no physical struggle or fight. She suffered a gunshot wound, but she was still able to get all of her students out of that classroom.
Cops say the 9mm gun was legally purchased by the student's mother.
We determined that the firearm was in the residence where they lived, and the child had obtained that firearm, placed it in his backpack, and brought it to school.
The teacher made it from the classroom to the main office despite a bleeding chest wound, according to a grandparent who happened to be there and administered CPR to the teacher.
She came into the office saying that she had been shot. She had blood on her hand and blood on her shirt, and she said that she had been shot. I don't know if she fainted, but she had fallen to the floor.
Here's what one 8-year-old experienced in another classroom.
We all stayed quiet. 2 people were crying, I will help them. And when the cops came, we were marching to the gym, and we were all safe.
A school employee rushed in and restrained the child.
The child became a little combative, actually struck the school employee that was restraining him.
And a SWAT team then secured the scene. No students were hurt.
But I can tell you that the individuals responsible will be held accountable. I can promise that.
The suspect now receiving treatment at a medical facility under a temporary detention order. The teacher upgraded to stable condition.
We need to keep the guns out of the hands of our young people. These are the things that happen when we have access to weapons.
Police say there is a possibility the student's mother could face charges. Now to raging waters throughout California. The Golden State facing wave after wave of severe weather, and the latest, record rains bringing mudslides. First responders rushing to the rescue as thousands flee. 90% of the state is under a flood watch, and at least 16 people are already dead. Catholic charities and dioceses around the state are on the front lines, helping those in need and preparing for the moment they can begin picking up pieces. The California Catholic Conference said this to Currents News: "We are praying for those who have lost their lives, those in flooded areas or who are at risk of flooding, for those who continue to be without power, and for emergency personnel who are working tirelessly to keep people safe." One of the hardest hit areas in California is Montecito, where up to a foot of rain is expected. Mike Valerio is there tracking the damage.
Trees toppled, homes underwater, and roads washed away as California deals with historic flooding.
I've never seen anything like it.
This storm, the latest in an unrelenting parade of severe weather to thrash the West Coast in recent weeks, saturating the wildfire and drought-scarred soil and giving the water nowhere to go.
We have had 5 atmospheric rivers come into California over 2 weeks. Everything is wet, everything is saturated, everything is at a breaking point.
Mass evacuations continue as roads are closed across the state because of mud and rock slides.
It was like 2 feet of mud and water coming down the street and out of the houses, so it was pretty scary.
Rescue crews statewide are working around the clock, walking stranded drivers to safety after a mudslide shut down Highway 126. Rescuing 2 people in this sinkhole near Santa Clarita, and airlifting an elderly couple and their dog from their Monterey County home.
We were looking out the window and we saw the bridge go. And when that bridge went, there's no way out.
Southern California will see a break in the weather Wednesday, but more rain and flooding are expected across northern parts of the state.
We hope that the storms that are coming through, this compounding impact, that we'll be able to continue to mount the response necessary to protect our people.
In Montecito, California, Mike Valerio, Currents News.
If you'd like to help with rescue and recovery efforts, Catholic Charities of California is on the front lines. Just go to CatholicCharitiesCA.org to donate. Still to come on Currents News.
I don't know, I think he said he was going to the Hudson.
Remembering a miracle. We'll look back on the 14th anniversary of the miracle on the Hudson and talk to one passenger who says God put him on that plane for a reason. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back.
Runway 1, that's good.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway?
That's the FAA's cockpit recording moments before Flight 1549 made an emergency landing in the Hudson River nearly 14 years ago. It's a day most of us will never forget, but especially those who were on that flight. All of them survived. It was the miracle on the Hudson. Joining us now is one of those passengers, Dave Sanderson, who has just written a new book, From Turmoil to Triumph. Dave, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Christine.
So take us back to that day in January of 2009. You stayed on the plane after it crashed into the river and let everybody else leave before you. Why did you do that?
That wasn't my game plan. My game plan was aisle up, out. That's what I kept saying in my head.
Yeah, get out.
But when I got to the aisle, something happened to change not only that day, but probably changed the direction I was going to take it. I heard my mom speak with me. My mom passed away in 1997, but there was something she would tell me when I was a child that popped into my head and was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And the right thing for me was you take care of other people first. And
right.
That's why instead of going out, I went back towards the back of the plane to see if anybody needed help.
Well, God certainly did take care of you. You weren't even supposed to be on that flight. I know you had rescheduled to an earlier flight that day to get home to your family. I want to read a part of the book you wrote. I think God put me on that plane for a reason. It was my time to grow. He gave me the courage I needed to help others get off the plane and the strength to swim to the ferry. God's hand was on all of us that day. That is just amazing to me. Why do you think God put you on that flight?
I think this is my belief. God put this situation in place for people to see there is hope. Mm-hmm. The country was going through such a tumultuous time at that time. And I think it was the busiest market at the busiest time. And I think it was one of those situations where he wanted to put something in place and say, I'm still here. And he put me on that plane. I think he could use me as a way to be able to show people that if you do the right thing, there is hope. And I truly believe I was on that plane for a reason and a purpose.
So tell us about some of the lessons you may have learned that day, and what do you hope readers will take away when they read your book?
Well, one of the first big lessons is something that my mom used to say to me, is if you can't, you must. And what happened to me is I was trying to get on the ferry, and I can't do this. I can't climb after being in the water first. But then I heard my mom say, if you can't, you must. And so I think it's one of the biggest lessons, because people right now especially, they're faced with so many things coming at them. They say, well, I can't get this done, I can't get this done, but if you make it a must, you can. I think that's one of the biggest lessons from that day.
So I know you were a religious man before you even got on this flight, but has this whole experience kind of strengthened your faith?
It's definitely been a reaffirmment of my faith. I've had so many faith experiences through this that I talk about, but I think God puts people in a place for a reason. And I believe that He's sent me all over the world, just like when He made the commandment, Jesus made the commandment, go around the world, right, to His disciples. That's what He's doing with me, and I've been very blessed to be able to share that message.
I think that you do that now. You're a speaker. You spread your story everywhere. So one quick thing: how were you able to get back on a plane after this crash? I think I'd be like, that's it. I take the train from now on.
Well, many people from that age still haven't got back on the plane. But the next day, I'll be very candid, the next day I was just being told what to do.
Yeah.
But the real challenge came the next week when my company asked me to fly to Michigan. And I got on a plane, and that was the first time I was alone. Plus I was on Delta, which is nothing wrong with, I love Delta.
Right.
But I was a rock star on US Airways. They knew who I was. And that was a really challenging time for me. But I talk about that experience now because that gave me, I think you have to face your fears.
Right.
And that's what gave me the opportunity to face my fear, get through it, and then be able to do.
There's one other thing I read in your book which I found really interesting. Something about the number 15. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's amazing how that number's followed, because that day was January 15th, flight 1549. I was in seat 15A. It's approximately 15 yards to the end of the wing. Wow. I mean, and if you look at what time the plane took off, 1,500 hours.
Oh, I'm getting chills.
So I think there's something with the number 15 for me, and it follows me, and I believe that, stands for being a leader, one who steps up, one who adds value. And whether I did all that, I don't know. I'll let other people decide, but I think that number 15 definitely had something to play with it.
Well, it was wonderful to hear your story. Thank you so much for being here. Dave Sanderson, author and survivor of The Miracle on the Hudson.
Thank you very much.
All right, and now if you'd like to get a copy of Dave's book, From Turmoil to Triumph, on Amazon or on his website, DaveSandersonSpeaks.com. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.